Hi all, good evening and welcome. I am Mangesh Deshmukh and on behalf of CareEdge, I welcome you to our today's discussion on Inside India's Pharma Pulse. We sincerely appreciate your time in joining us for this webinar. We would like to welcome our esteemed guest speakers for today, Mr. Arvind Agarwal, CFO, Ajanta Pharma Limited, Mr. Mitanshu Shah, Senior Vice President, Finance, Alembic Pharmaceutical Limited, and Mr. Ashutosh Dhawan, Group CFO, Mankind Pharma Limited. He is not able to join because of some important and urgent commitments. This session will be moderated by Pulkit Agarwal, Director at CareEdge Ratings. We will commence the session with a presentation by Naveen Kumar, Associate Director at CareEdge Ratings. This will be followed by a panel discussion and Q&A session. In case of queries, participants are requested to key in your panel. We will take up your queries during our panel discussion. Now may I invite Naveen to make his presentation.
Thank you, Mangesh. Good evening to one and all. I will take you through the presentation. Let's begin the presentation with a bird's eye view of Indian pharma industry. The Indian pharma sector commands a significant global presence, particularly in generic segments, where it ranks as the third largest by volume and 13th by value. Over the period from FY18 to FY23, the industry, encompassing both domestic and export markets, demonstrated a CAGR of about 6% to 8%. This growth was driven by 8% increase in exports and 6% increase in the domestic market during the same period. The Indian pharma industry has grown from about $35 billion in FY18 to about $50 billion in FY23, and it is likely to reach about $57 billion in FY25. Globally, Indian pharma industry has a strong footprint. The pharma exports and domestic market contributed equally to the overall Indian pharma industry. However, in FY23, the industry's growth rate moderated to approximately 5%. This deceleration can be attributed to pricing pressures experienced in the export markets, rising input costs, and a high base effect stemming from previous fiscal year FY 2022. In this slide, we shall be discussing from where the major growth to pharma industry has come from during last 5 to 6 years and what would be the growth rate during the next 2 years. About 80 to 85% of pharma exports include formulation products, and it has grown at a CAGR of about 7% during FY17 to FY23. The pharma exports during FY22 and FY23 has exhibited marginal growth, which impacted the industry's CAGR during FY17 to FY23. While growth remained muted during FY22 on account of high base effect during FY21, the growth during FY23 was impacted due to pricing pressure in the US market, and multilateral funding agencies have continued their emphasis on COVID drugs. At the same time, the domestic market has consistently exhibited growth consumption, leading to CAGR of about 8%. Going forward, CareEdge expects that the domestic consumption continue to grow both in terms of value and volume by about 8 to 8.5% CAGR for next 2 years. The price hike allowed for essential medicines under NELM is expected to benefit the domestic growth to a certain extent. When it comes to exports, CareEdge expects that the regulatory headwinds are likely to constrain the exports to developed market. However, increasing focus on synthesis segment, complex and specialty products, apart from easing of pricing pressure in US generics, are likely to support the growth in medium term. Increasing access to healthcare shall also be driving the growth in the emerging markets. In this slide, we shall be discussing about the specific market which is expected to drive the export growth. Across the globe, US contributes about 40 to 45% of pharma share, which is significantly higher. Thus, when it comes to exports, the presence in US markets play out a critical role. As we can see from the bottom left side pie chart, that almost 1/3 of the total exports is being garnered from US markets, followed by UK and South Africa. The top left side bar chart depicts the trend in pharma exports during FY17 to FY23. During FY17 and FY18, the industry exhibited muted growth on account of some of the major reasons such as significant regulatory headwinds faced by the Indian pharma companies, and this is combined with the shutdown of industries in China to comply with their pollution norms, which has led to considerable shortage of key starting materials and bulk drugs. Nevertheless, the formulations exports have shown consistent growth, reporting CAGR of about 7.5%, while bulk drug exports have reported CAGR of about 6% during FY17 to FY23. The exports of pharma products are expected to rise gradually. CareEdge expects India's pharma export to grow at around 7 to 8% in the next 2 years, that is still FY25, with major contribution coming from generic formulations. Indian pharma companies are one of the price-effective producers of generic formulations. Changing world demography, wherein we observe that larger number, that is about 30-35% of the formulation, expected to fall in the range of 50 to 70 years, combined with lifestyle-related diseases, is expected to drive the growth. Further, with greater focus by top 20 pharma companies on India on R&D of the complex and specialty generic and biosimilar products are expected to drive the pharma export growth. Now coming to the specific reasons, CareEdge expects the growth in formulation, especially in regulated markets, is expected to come from the two primary reasons. One is on account of new product launches in complex generics, specialty chemicals, and products going off patent, and second being abating of the pricing pressure. Now, while coming to the pharma emerging formulation markets, it is expected on account of depreciating currency. However, here what we see is that the growth prospects are also dependent upon the availability of the forex reserves. Nevertheless, exploration of the new markets or increase in generic penetration in existing markets is expected to drive the growth. Now coming to the bulk drugs, revival of exports from the China or launch of price war by the Chinese bulk drug companies can significantly pose downside risk for the Indian pharma bulk drugs, at least in the medium term. Nevertheless, CareEdge expects that the contract manufacturing for the global pharma players and supply of the bulk drugs for the branded generics in regulated markets would benefit the industry in the medium term. Further, the growth would also be supported by the patent expiry in regulated markets, which we will be discussing in the next slide. Patent expiry allows the generic drugs to penetrate in the market over the next 5 to 6 years, that is till 2026. The patented products worth of about $224 billion are going to go off patent. This provides a large opportunity to Indian generic formulation companies. Many of the Indian pharma companies are already working to develop the generic version of the patented products to seize the upcoming opportunity. It is expected that Indian pharma companies may get around $4 to $5 billion opportunity due to the patent expiry within the next 3 to 4 years. We'll now move on to domestic consumption. Domestic pharma consumption grew at CAGR of about 7.5% during past 6 years and stood at $24.5 billion in FY23. Now it is expected to grow at a pace of around 8% in the next 2 years till FY25, primarily driven by growing healthcare awareness, penetration of healthcare insurance, growing lifestyle diseases, and increasing government spending under the Ayushman Bharat scheme. Especially post-COVID, the demand for the preventive drugs like vitamins and minerals to grow faster than the industry growth rate. In this backdrop, let us discuss which therapeutic segments are contributing highest in the next slide. From this slide, we can infer that the 4 therapeutic segments, that is anti-infectives, cardiac, gastrointestinal, and anti-diabetic, almost contribute about 50%, while the rest of the therapeutic segments contribute remaining 50%. As discussed earlier, the cardiac, gastrointestinal, and anti-diabetic segments has exhibited healthy growth rate on account of aging population and lifestyle-related diseases. Although in global market, oncology contributes the highest share, in India, the contribution of the same is about 2%. However, this segment over a period of the time has exhibited significant growth. In order to make the essential medicines affordable, the government has issued a drug price control order, under which the government has fixed the prices of commonly used essential medicines that are listed in NLEM. And it is observed that periodically the number of drugs under its ambit has been growing. As it can be seen from the left-hand side chart, that during FY11, the number of drugs under the NLEM was 348, and the same has increased to 384 during FY23. While the prices of these drugs are fixed, the government has periodically allowed hike in the prices of those drugs so that the domestic formulation manufacturers can safeguard their margins, especially considering the factor that Indian pharma industry significantly depends for KSMs and intermediates from China, wherein the prices of some of the raw materials have increased anywhere between 40% to 100%. In the month of March 2023, the government has allowed the price hike of about 12%, and the effect of the same would be seen in FY24. Further, it has been observed that majority of the pharma companies, in order to protect their market share, have not increased drug prices to the extent that they are allowed. Overall, CareEdge expects that the price hike allowed would augur well for the growth in the domestic pharma. Here in this slide, we will discuss about the regulatory risk. With increasing presence in developed markets like USA, the regulatory risk remains a critical monitorable. Actually, from the time the COVID has started, the number of inspections made by USFDA outside the US has reduced significantly. However, it has been observed that with receding of the COVID situation, the markets opening up, the inspections have also started to pick up with the pace, but in a gradual way. In the past, India has faced regulatory challenges by USFDA. However, with experience, the Indian companies have strengthened the compliance aspects. USFDA classified the audit observation in the form of no action indicated, voluntary action indicated, and official action initiated. Despite a rise in number of USFDA audits, the instances of adverse observation, that is, official action initiated by USFDA, came down since FY 2018. Further, out of the total warning letters, the number of warning letters received by relatively large-sized companies having annual turnover of more than 1,000 crores has reduced to nil during first half of the calendar year, that is 2023 current year, compared to 10 during 2019. USFDA in the recent past has ramped up its regulatory inspection rates of the pharmaceutical manufacturing companies. During the past 6 months, that is from January to June 2023, it has been observed that many Indian pharma companies have received Form 43 observation for their manufacturing facilities, although number of warning letters are nil. Rising instances of audit observations by USFDA impacts the compliance cost and in turn hurts the profitability of the pharma sector. Any adverse observations from the regulatory authorities can also lead to a delay in the launching of the new products or may even impact the current revenue stream, thus denting its prospects at least for the medium term. The ability of the Indian pharma companies to successfully sail through the inspections carried out by the regulatory authorities would be critical in determining their future growth plans and profitability margins. However, it is found that the large pharma companies are also hedging themselves through site transfer wherever regulatory issues are present and filing of ANDA from two sides, which mitigates the regulatory risk to some extent. China accounts for approximately 43% of the total pharma imports in India, making it the primary source of bulk drugs for the country's pharmaceutical industry. While imports of the other pharmaceutical products are diversified across multiple countries, the reliance on the China for the bulk drug stands out as a critical point of vulnerability. The contribution of the bulk drug imports from China has exhibited significant growth in both value and volume terms. In terms of value, it has increased from 64% in FY14 to about 71% during FY23, and in terms of the volume, it is as high as 75%. Notably, the total bulk drug imports have grown at a CAGR of about 7%, while it is from the China, it has increased by 9% during FY14 to FY23. The implications of such reliance on the China for bulk drugs are far-reaching, particularly for life-saving drugs, where the dependency on KSMs from China exceeds 50%. This situation raises legitimate concerns about the availability, cost, and uninterrupted supply of crucial medicines in India's healthcare landscape. As per CareEdge analysis, the vulnerabilities that industry is exposed due to dependence on the China are: first one is that low bargaining power in relationship with Chinese companies, leading to industry being susceptible to adverse price movements of raw materials. Second one is unpredictable events such as recent pandemic or wars can adversely impact the supply chain. Third one is weakening interest in the domestic bulk drug manufacturers due to weak ROCE. Now, when we delve into the specifics of pharma imports, it is evident that bulk drugs hold a significant share, accounting for approximately 58% of total imports. Formulations follow closely, contributing about 30 to 35%, while the rest comprises of Ayush and herbal and surgical products. Interestingly, of the total bulk drugs manufactured, almost 1/3 is exported and the remaining 2/3 are domestically consumed. India's contribution to the global supply of generic drugs is noteworthy, as it constitutes about 20% of global supply. The country's prowess in the pharmaceutical domain is further solidified by its ranking, that is third in terms of the volume, 14 in terms of value. However, this position as a prominent supplier of the generic drugs also entails a substantial demand for the bulk drugs. In order to address and lower this high import dependency from China, the government has introduced PLI Scheme 1 and 2. Of course, there's one more scheme about the bulk drug parks, which we are not covered in the present slide. In the response to those schemes, it is expected that during FY24, the total project completions in the drugs and pharmaceuticals industry is expected to be around $516 million, which is the highest registered during the last decade. Further, among the project completions, one specific project which has been set up for the penicillin G, the manufacturing plant is located at Kakinada, which is Andhra Pradesh, alone contributes about $244 million, which is almost half of the total project completions envisaged during FY24. For penicillin G, India depends almost 90 to 100%, and commercialization of this project is expected to bring down the dependency significantly. According to comprehensive analysis made by the CareEdge of companies operating in API segment, it was found that net asset turnover stands somewhere about 2.5 to 3 times. This metrics reflects the efficiency with which these companies are utilizing their assets to generate revenue. In light of the projects completed during FY23 and the estimated projects to be completed during FY24 and FY25 under the PLI scheme, CareEdge anticipates a positive impact on the reduced reliance on the imports from China. By the end of FY24, it is estimated the dependency on the Chinese imports to be somewhere about 68%, and further by end of FY25, it is expected to be 65%. Although a positive development, it is worth noting that dependency will still remain at a relatively higher level. During the next 2 years, that is FY24 and FY25, the Indian pharma industry is expected to grow by approximately 79%. This growth will lead to incremental requirements for APIs, which are expected to be met through enhanced capacity additions under PLI schemes. As a result, the overall dependency on the import of the bulk drugs from China is likely to continue to be high, over 60%. As you can see from the relative cost comparison table on the left-hand side, below the chart, India has significant cost advantage in production, R&D, and clinical trials over the developed markets. The cost of production in India is almost 50% cheaper than the developed markets and also the other costs. These factors given India an advantage over the developed countries. With upcoming opportunities in developed markets, generic formulation companies in India have been investing in their capabilities to develop complex and specialty drugs. As you can see, that R&D expenditure of top 10 pharma companies remained in the range of 6 to 8% of the net sales during past 5 years, and it is expected to remain about 6.5 to 7% over the next 2 years, as these companies are working with a strong product pipeline. Majority of the existing product pipeline are targeted towards the US and European markets given the opportunity. It is also to be noted that the total ANDA approvals granted by US FDA, India commands a major share in product approvals. In the right-hand side chart, we can see the India's pharma companies' dominance in the ANDA approvals. India's share of ANDA approvals in total ANDA approvals has remained at around 35 to 40% during past 8 to 9 years. During calendar year 2022, in terms of the percentage, the product approvals are highest at 48%. India has a distinction of having the highest number of US FDA compliant plants outside the US. With the available US FDA compliant infrastructure, it is expected that India will lead the patent cliff opportunity in US. This slide depicts the industry aggregate of all listed pharma entities, wherein we can observe clearly how the increase in operating costs has dented the profitability margins during FY23. However, with softening of raw material prices and also freight costs, the margins are expected to bounce back to 21% by FY25. The chart on right-hand side depicts the debt metrics of listed pharma entities, wherein it can be observed that the balance sheets are generally low leveraged, with the debt to EBITDA remaining comfortable below 0.5 times. During the pre-COVID and post-COVID periods, the Indian pharmaceutical industry experienced significant changes in its operating margins. In FY21, due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, there was a noticeable reduction in the marketing, traveling, and conveyance expenses. Coupled with the increasing sales opportunity related to COVID-19, this resulted in substantial increase in the operating margins for the industry. However, the subsequent years, FY22 and FY23 presented new challenges for the pharma sector. Elevated input prices, rising freight costs, extended delivery timelines, and competitive pressures in the US generic markets has led to the moderation in the operating margins. As we look ahead, there are positive signs for the industry. Raw material prices are stabilizing, freight rates are normalizing, and pricing pressures in the US market is easing. These factors are expected to contribute to an expansion of the operating margins by approximately 100 to 150 basis points over FY24 and FY25 compared to FY23. Furthermore, the industry's continued focus on launching specialty and niche projects in the US market is anticipated to provide further support to the profitability margins. The Indian pharma industry is expected to see a growth of around 7 to 8% over FY24 to FY25, while the operating profitability margins for the formulation companies is expected to improve around 23 to 23.5%, and that of the bulk drugs, it is expected to improve between 19 to 20% in the same period. In terms of the overall coverage, CareEdge pharma portfolio comprises of 105 companies, and in terms of the market size, the same forms about 50%. In terms of the sector spread, the rated portfolio encompasses the entire value chain, that is bulk drug manufacturers, which forms about 40% of the portfolio, formulators 47% portfolio, and the remaining others, which comprise of CRAMS, biosimilars, and other players, which is about 13%. And the case median rating for the sector is at BBB, and over 87% of the dated rate is investment grade. Date weighted median rating is A. In the current slide, we shall discuss about the rating discussion. The top two slides presents the number of downgrades and upgrades in bulk drugs and formulation entities. Overall, it can be inferred that in pharma segment, upgrades way more than downgrades, due to which we can see that the modified grade ratio, which basically means number of entities upgraded plus number of entities wherein the ratings are retained, divided by number of entities downgraded plus number of entities wherein the ratings are retained, which although has come down from the peak of about 1.36 times during FY21 to 1.08 times during FY23. However, it is still more than 1. As per the CareEdge pharma rated portfolio, about 87% of the entities fall under investment grade, that is BBB category and above, which is higher than many other sectors. With this, we will come to a conclusion of the presentation. Now I request Pulkit to kindly introduce our esteemed panelists and moderate session.
Thank you, Naveen. Attendees are requested to key in their questions, which we will take up during our panel discussion. Now may I invite Mr. Pulkit Agarwal to take over the session, please.
Thank you, Mangesh.
Yeah, Pulkit is director at CareEdge Ratings and is a qualified chartered accountant and an MBA. Pulkit has 17 years of experience in corporate ratings, and in CareEdge, he has led various teams across diverse sectors. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mangesh. Good afternoon, everyone. Now it's time to seek opinions from the experts in the field. Before we start our panel discussion, let me introduce our esteemed guest members for today. Our first panel member is Mr. Arvind Agrawal. Mr. Agrawal is CFO of Ajanta Pharma Limited. He has over 3.5 decades of experience in finance, information technology, HR, and supply chain, and has contributed significantly to formulating and executing core strategies of the company. A rank holder of 1984 batch of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Mr. Agrawal started his career with ITBI. After a short stint as an investment banker, he joined Ajanta Pharma in 1998. Very warm welcome, Mr. Agrawal.
Thank you.
Our second panel member is Mr. Mitanshu Shah. Mr. Shah is Senior Vice President, Alembic Pharma for last 15 years. He is heading finance and accounts, management reporting, business finance and investors relation at Alembic. He is also responsible for M&A and treasury function for Alembic Group. Mr. Shah has over 25 years of corporate experience in variety of subjects encompassing field of finance and management. Mr. Shah holds Master of Commerce degree from MS University of Baroda and is also a fellow member of Institute of Cost Accountants of India and management degree from AII MAS. Very warm welcome, Mr. Shah.
Thank you very much. Wish everybody a warm afternoon.
Our third panel member, Mr. Dhawan, could not join due to some exigencies. We'll start our discussion for today with Mr. Agrawal. Mr. Agrawal, as per our analysis, Indian pharma industry is expected to register a CAGR growth of around 8 to 9%. Anti-infective is the biggest therapeutic segment, followed by cardiac. What is your perspective on the growth in domestic pharma market and which therapies do you think would be driving this growth?
I think though anti-infective is the biggest contributor to the Indian pharma market, but now I think in the past few years, the lifestyle diseases have taken over in a big way. So today the growth is coming mainly from cardio and diabetes, which are the major segment which are now coming up, and they are the one which are chronic segments. So the patient has to take the medicine consistently. So naturally, the growth is going to be driven by these kind of segments which are really very apparent in the recent past. Also, what we have seen is that even the other segments like Dharma, which used to be a very small segment in the past, and only used to be a Dharma only for the purpose of clinical work. Now it has gone to the cosmeceutical Dharma also, and that is something which also is showing a very good growth. So these are the segments which I think are going to really take lead in terms of the growth of the industry in India. Of course, the anti-infectives and other segments are definitely going to be there, cough, cold, vitamins, etc. And as your presentation also mentioned, the awareness has gone up substantially in India. Penetration has gone up quite a few, bit in the rural part of the India. So all these factors are definitely contributing to the good growth in the Indian pharma market.
Okay. So does that mean that anti-infective growth rate would come down and other segments would grow at a faster pace than
Certainly, certainly, it will definitely happen. That's what is happening in last about 3 years. If you see, the growth of cardiology is big more than anti-infectives. So that is something which is very clear. And it is unfortunate that we are getting lifestyle diseases which are increasing more, which should not be the case. But I think that is what is exactly happening with the lifestyle which we are currently enjoying. So that is where the problem is, because as the sanitation, hygiene factors and everything awareness increases, I think anti-infectives will start slowing down quite a bit. And definitely these diseases which are lifestyle diseases are going to get better growth and better chances to grow in the future.
Okay. Mr. Mitanshu, what's your view on this domestic pharma growth?
Yeah, see, if we see what's happening is that, the industry is also probably more interested in growing chronic over the acute, for the simple reason that if I am able to generate a prescription on the chronic, it's going to probably last for, like a cardio prescription is going to last for probably a life actually, while anti-infectives, cough and cold, pain management is like a one-time prescription and you are fine and then you are okay actually, right? So larger part of investments are also going into the chronic therapies, and then they are pretty profitable ones as well. And as a result of which, if you see more than half a decade now, acute has been growing at around 3%, 4%, while the chronics have been growing greater than 10% or so actually.
Absolutely.
So I think that tendency is going to continue going ahead. And chronic is only going to become more lucrative in terms of revenue as well as the bottom line contributor.
Okay, that's an interesting point, that chronic prescription life is much higher than normal medicine. So the growth rate is also on a higher side. Now let me come to the US market. The US market, as we know, continues to contribute the largest share of the Indian pharma exports, despite of several headwinds that it has been facing in recent years, such as pricing pressure and intense competition. So how do you feel the landscape of the US market in next 3 to 5 years, and which segments do you feel will do well for the Indian pharma companies there?
So US has kind of seen the cyclical kind of growth and the downturns actually. If you see 2011 to 15 was a very good time frame. Then we had little lull. Then the COVID came in. And then so what happened? And this is very interesting for us to understand. During the time of COVID, there was less FDA activities. There was a travel advisory ban. FDA couldn't come. Companies actually manufactured for 2 shifts, 3 shifts, and there was a excessive inventories in America at a point in time. Now there was a sudden rush to liquidate that inventory in because there is a shelf life issue here. So they started giving larger discounts. I mean, that's true for most of the companies actually. And then there was a severe price erosion considering all these factors. That has kind of continued at this point in time. What's happened because of this is that frankly, there are very less companies, unless they had very differentiated offering or a product. Nobody is kind of making decent profitability as far as US landscape is concerned. As a result, people have started recalibrating their US strategy. When I say recalibrating, it means that having looked at their R&D spend, I mean recalibrating the R&D spend number, which has also come down now. So while the overall context of growth and everything, that remains the largest market, but because of the headwinds that the US is seeing, lesser capital allocation is going into that segment at this point in time. Having said this, you cannot ignore that market. It is the largest market actually. $1.2 trillion is the size of the world pharmaceuticals market, and 40% of that or more comes from the US market alone. So you like it, hate it, you can't ignore it actually. So I think investments will continue to grow. We have to just wait for some respite. And how will this respite come actually? The forces are that there's a severe buyers concentration. 3 large distributors are holding close to 90-95% of the market share. We don't see that there is going to be any respite as far as buyer consolidation is concerned. This lower ROCs and lower margins could mean that some of the players could exit the marketplace, and if that happens, that will give a little breather and the margins would come back to America. We've seen this happening in past. It's question of time when it will happen. Nobody knows, but we should stay put into the American markets.
Right. Mr. Agrawal, what's your view on this, on the US market?
What Mitanshu has said is absolutely correct, and I think just to add what he said, if you have seen in the past 3-4 years, there was a spurt of new entrants in the US market during that period of 11 to 15, where everybody felt that it is a very attractive market and everybody should be there. Earlier, only large companies were there. Then mid-sized companies like ours entered in that particular market. Now, in past 5 years, if you see the way the things are going on, there are very few new entrants which are coming in. So as Mitanshu said, very true that, there will be, if the profitability is low, when the margins are low, naturally everybody will think twice before investing in that market. And investments are very high. The cost of doing business with US has gone up substantially. Because of their Gaduwa fees, their the charges which they are levying, and everything for that matter, even the supply chain and everything. So I think at some point of time, according to us, I think there will be some dropouts which will be there in the existing supply side. And because of which there are already talks which are going on in the market saying that there are some people who have declared bankruptcy and all that, and because of which there are shortages in the US market, which was never the situation earlier. So I think to some extent as you said, it is a market where you can't live and you are also not making big money. So it's something which is love and hate relationship kind of thing which is there. But yes, it is the largest market of the world and you can't ignore it. So you have to stay put there. As you right, Mitanshu said, we also have very clearly said that capital allocation will be calibrated, from 15 to 20 NDAs earlier, which we used to file or plan to file. We came down to 8 to 12, and then now we are coming down to 6 to 8. So naturally, all these things are going to happen. And that is what is something which will at least allow the companies to remain afloat in that particular market, and also do not go into the situation where that severe price pressure comes in.
Correct. So because of the size, we cannot ignore the US market.
Absolutely.
So coming back to the Indian pharma market. So over last 4-5 years, we have seen multiple changes that have happened in the Indian pharma landscape also, like increase in drugs under price control, consolidation in trade channels, and emergence of online pharma. So, Mr. Agrawal, what's your view? How the Indian pharma industry will pan out, and will we be looking at some structural changes over next couple of years in this?
I think whatever has happened in last 5 years, I think it's something which is very positive according to me. The online pharmacies or whether trade generics or all these aspects which have come in is something which are very positive. But on the other side, the NLEM number of products which are increasing, and the way the interferences are happening, the way the policies are continuously being changed, etc., is also headwinds which the industry has to face. Having said all that, I think industry is quite resilient. It's quite agile, and it is ready to face all these headwinds. Definitely. One major aspect which I have seen in the past 5 years is really that the penetration has gone much deeper now. At one point of time, a small village may not be having the medicines at that time, but today you can get every medicine in every nook and corner of this country. And that's a very positive sign, actually. And that is what has really allowed the industry to keep on growing in spite of pricing pressure. The pricing has not really increased. As you rightly said in your remarks also, that the prices have not gone up, even though government allowed 12.5%. Because of the competition, the prices were that much increase was not taken by the industry. So it was all the pressure which was there, peer pressure which was there, that we cannot increase beyond a particular point. So customer has definitely benefited. But at the same time, I think this penetration has helped the industry also to grow. It has really allowed us to reach every nook and corner, every village which is available, and wherever there is a doctor, there is a medicine which is available to you. So I think we are going to grow. The industry is going to definitely grow in India. Whatever said and done, I think all the headwinds put together also cannot stop the industry from growing. Only the question is, yes, whether those 13-14% growth can come back today or not is something which is a big question. So I think we are expecting 6 to 8% as the reasonable growth which we should see in the Indian market.
Right. Even our expectation is around 8% growth rate.
Yeah.
Now coming to this US FDA. So as a regulatory body, we have seen some stringent adverse observation that has been taken in the past. So one of the measures that now the companies have normally adopted is filing the products from dual location. But being a risk mitigation factor, it also has an additional cost associated with it. So how do you see this as a prudent step to bypass the US FDA thing?
Mitanshu, you would like to take this?
Yeah.
I think, okay. See, I would like to start with an analogy, and I would say that if you have tendency of keeping one room dirty, you would definitely keep the other room dirty as well, okay? So it doesn't mean that, I have another room, I'm going to keep the one room clean and the other room is going to be, pretty shabby. So it doesn't work that way. I think rather the case is different. It's completely ulta. Like, if I have one plant, the entire management bandwidth, the entire focus is like to keep the place neat, clean, regulatory compliant. I mean, you are going to do independent audits. I mean, you're going to put in some mock audits. You're going to continuously monitor and see that you do not get failed at the actual audit. So single plant, that's on the philosophical point of why you should have one plant and not two plants. Actually, the second important thing I would say is that and we just discussed, and Arvind just resonated to my thoughts, is about the costs in America, right? I mean, everything is increasing, and there is no probably margin to run a single plant. Where do I have a luxury of keeping two plants actually? So if that is the case, I think sometimes back there was this whole where people are making disproportionate sort of money. Yes, there was this luxury that, oh, I can do this. Nobody does this in current context of things or current scheme of things. I think what one can do if they want to really deleverage and de-risk themselves with this kind of scenario, there are several CMO facilities available now across the globe actually, and there are a lot of spare capacities as well. So if you know that there's a 80-20 ratio works everywhere. I mean, in whichever industry you go, 20% of products will contribute to 80% of your revenue and 80% of your profits as well, actually, largely. Okay. Now, these products, you identify that out of my 200 ANDAs, these 20 products are something, or 25 products are something which are very critical to my success. You can actually file those ANDAs from a different site and keep everything ready. I mean, as an alternate site which is available. So what can happen is that in case of any eventuality, the second site is available so that you do not suffer. So this would be like a very in a fraction of the cost, you can have the same thing rather than keeping two plants for yourself. Just outsource this risk somewhere else actually.
Okay. Now coming to the R&D thing, so when we are analyzing the top 10 pharma companies, their R&D spend as percentage of sales has come down to roughly 6.5% in 23 as compared to the peak of around 9% in FY18. When we are looking at the R&D spend, it is mainly towards specialty chemicals, biosimilars, and complex generics. So do you feel that the industry is sort of taking risk in terms of its lumpiness in the R&D spend and simultaneously also reducing the overall R&D spend as a percentage of sales? Mr. Agrawal, if you can take this.
Yeah. See, I think, no, this is not really the, question. It is something which is, as Mitanshu said, it was a luxury earlier. That, you can spend 9% because you are making so much of money in the markets, especially the regulated markets. So you had that luxury and you could really be that, okay, even if my 50% products really succeed, I think I don't mind, spending that kind of money. With the cost increasing, with the things really becoming a little more sensitive in terms of the margins and profitability, I think the census prevailed. And automatically, the industry adjusted to that new reality that, okay, I can now reduce that cost. Because earlier, the success ratio used to be like, okay, 60% success is also fine. That's something which is good enough. But now I think we are talking about 85%, 90% success ratio as compared to 60%. So that is where the cost is coming down. It's not that focus is coming down. Definitely the focus is something which is definitely there. It is something which is like has become little more specific. The other aspect of it is that the risk which is to be taken. I think pharma industry is one where R&D is a must. Without R&D, really you can't survive, because if you feel that you will be able to really keep on doing the business without R&D, I think you should forget about it. And that's what the industry has recognized and industry has been spending consistently. The only thing is the variety of spends have changed, to a great extent. If you see in last 1 decade, the amount of spending which used to be there on US, on the emerging markets, on the India market, like biosimilars and all the new areas which you are talking about, specialty chemicals, I think the whole change is something which is really beautiful. I think there is a very good shift in terms of focusing more on the value-added products, focusing on the margin accretive products, so that you can really allow the R&D ROI to go up. So that is where I think the change is, and it is very positive change. So 9% to 6% is something which, according to me, is very, very sensible thing which they have done, and with very big consciousness. It is not that just abruptly they have taken the charge, but it is very conscious decision which they have taken.
Okay. Mr. Shah, your views on R&D?
Yeah, I mean, Arvind ji has largely covered it. I would just like to add a couple of things in that. One area where, Indian promoters and the Indian companies largely cut their exposures were also on the NC portion of it. I mean, there was a plethora of organizations who, at a point in time, a decade back, started a lot of NC programs, and people thought that, the game of generics is over, and if I want to have disproportionate sort of growth, then NC is the way to go. And I mean, people went and actually, I'll not name, but people went and bought some obscure molecule on MS at even $80 million, where phase 1 was also even not done actually. Okay, so I mean, those kind of fanatic spends were happening, and those kind of things have been absolutely recalibrated. Common sense has now started coming in that this is really not our cup of tea. I think 1.5%, 2% has gone off just off the table only on the NC portion actually. So that spend is kind of not there, and the other ones are really getting recalibrated. What has also happened, I mean, at the world level, I think the total global spend on R&D is close to 31 between 30 to 35 billion dollars actually every year. And it stayed there for a very long time now, almost half a decade actually. And there's some smart work which are happening, like just said, like, so there is a lot of AI getting into it, so which helps you to deliver the, I mean, the drug development is so much faster. You are weeding out all the uncertainties, you're choosing the right path. So lot of things are happening faster than what used to happen a decade back actually. That is also cutting the cost. So you're not really affecting the quality. The quantity spend is still reducing actually. So that is the sum and substance probably from my end, just to add.
Look, continuing with this US FDA thing, so what we have seen in last couple of years, US FDA observations and warning letters have come down, but simultaneously number of inspections post-COVID have also reduced. So in light of this, do you feel that the compliances from the Indian pharma industries have also strengthened and improved over the last couple of years? Or is it only to do with the reduced number of inspections from the US FDA?
Not at all. I think it is the industry has really risen to the occasion. They have strengthened. In fact, in the past, whatever has happened was something which was, I think, was little, catching unaware, that kind of situation which happened. But otherwise, absolutely now the industry is very well strengthened. They have tightened their belts. As Mitanshu said, every person is focusing on one plant, which is really, they want to keep it absolutely, fit and fine. And that's what you have seen in the past. We saw some statistics in the, this year, at least in the current year, the number of inspections which have ended up with zero, remarks is something which has increased as compared to all the past years of 10 years, 9 years. So you can see that, that trend is coming now where the observations are reducing. Otherwise, earlier, commonly 7, 8 observations, 15 observations were very, very common. But today there are plants where they are just coming out with 0 observations. And that's a very beautiful, very welcome thing which is there in the industry. And that is basically because all the promoters have realized that if you want to be there in that market, you have to be fit and fine. You have to be absolutely as per what they need or as per their norms. And that is what our industry has really come up to the age now.
Other question that I had is in terms of government as a major buyer. So if you look at regulated markets or even the emerging markets, government is one of the biggest buyers of for pharma industry. However, in India, the share of government purchase is very low if we look at the overall size of the domestic pharma. So do you think that this is likely to change over next decade or so?
Mitanshu?
No, I mean, if you really ask me, this configuration should continue. There should not be a change actually. In fact, reverse would happen largely because, at a point in time, there were a lot of people who were under the poverty belt line actually. Those are all getting elevated and they have the purchasing power. They want to buy in better quality drugs, and they want to be part of the mainstream, arena. So once you get there, you don't want to just have generics. You want to have a branded drugs. You want to have a better quality drugs. Actually, some of and see, awareness is coming thick and fast. I mean, we do not have our very learned speaker today, Astosh, my friend. Actually, he would have said that they have sort of launched a ad campaign which now says that US FDA quality drugs at Indian prices or something like that, actually,
Yes,
so, so what I'm trying to say is that, people want to have medicines which are quality medicines, and the general perception is that if it is going to come through the government quotas, the government machinery, government systems, it is going to be little compromised in terms of quality, actually. So, and India, the way we are structured at this point in time, government has not meddled much with the system. I mean, the public health has not been sort of, very big thrust. It's individuals who take care of the things by themselves, and that's how the supply chain has been for decades together now. And I don't see any urgent need for government to sort of change that, actually. So to me, this will either continue or the government procurements will only go down from here. What do you say, Arvindji?
I think you are absolutely right. The only thing which I can tell you is that here the government has made many smart moves. Jan Aushadhi is one of the major thing which the government has done. Where they have made the products available at a very cheaper rate, at a very discounted rate. At the same time, the availability has been really streamlined. Now we have got something around 4,500 stores now of Jan Aushadhi, and they are talking about increasing it to 10,000. They have, been very consistent in terms of NLEM. They are consistent so they are enabling it for the, people to purchase, but actually they are not interfering with the, system or trying to get into the system of distributing free medicines. So I think that is something which is not there, and that's what Mitanshu said, it will reverse. In fact, according to us, with the Ayushman Bharat and all those schemes which are coming in, I think they have outsourced it to the insurance companies and all that. They have paid the insurance premium and said that, look, now you take care. So that kind of thing is something which is a scenario. So government intervention or government buying will reduce according to us.
Okay. So we will pause the panel discussion and take up the question from participants. I would request Mangesh to open the Q&A session with the attendees.
Dear participants, we would now begin our Q&A sessions. You are requested to key in your query. Thank you.
The first question is from Mr. Chidambaram. He is asking what would be the impact of antitrust lawsuits filed in the US against Indian pharma companies? Will it impact the Indian companies' exports to the US markets?
I think, one thing is for sure that these kind of things are very common in US. And this is something which is happening not today, but for last, a decade or so, we have seen these kind of things which are happening time and again. The only thing is that, yes, it really, again, increases the cost of the industry, because ultimately whatever happens, the antitrust and everything, whatever is happening, you are supposed to pay if at all you are, proved guilty or if you are compromising. And that's where the cost goes up. So that is where I think the impact will be there to that extent. But otherwise than that, I don't think there is going to be any major impact.
Okay.
I totally agree, Arvindji. I mean, when you are playing a game of cricket, you may get bouncers and, you may get a wicket someday where the ball will not even rise on the bat, actually. So, yeah, this is like, the day India went into America, or for that matter, any other major countries, I mean, regulated markets. These were very common things, actually, and this is a cost of doing business. You have to factor in your business arithmetics, actually. That's all. I mean, nothing major happens. That's it.
Okay. Next question is on price increase under drugs under price control. So Mr. Anil is asking, in spite of the increase in the prices, some of the companies have not taken commensurate price increase due to intense competition. Do you feel that this will impact margins of the player in the industry? Mr.
Certainly it will impact, no doubt about it. But question is, what do you want? You want the market share or you want the profit? If you are not going to get the market share, profits are not going to be there. So ultimately it is, a balancing which has to be done by the industry in terms of, what margin you want to keep and also what market share you want to keep. So both these things are very important. And that's where I think it plays out that, because see, the price increase which is allowed is straight away connected to the WIP index. But then WIPI index is something which is not the only factor which is really impacting your cost. There are other factors also. So maybe, industry is doing a good balancing act, I will say, to, allow the customer also to be happy, at the same time retaining their margins to some extent.
Okay.
Also, what has happened, Arvind, is that even the input costs have gone down. I mean, the freights have come down. I mean, so in a way, those have been enablers actually from the COVID time to today. Some of those API prices or intermediates, advanced intermediates, KSM prices have also come. Solvent prices have come down. I mean, that has all helped actually. So maybe industry wants to pass on that to the consumer. I mean, so that's another angle of looking at things.
Very true.
Right. Next question is on the PLI scheme. So, government has, Mr. Amit is asking that the government has introduced PLI scheme for KSM drug intermediaries and APIs, and the scheme has met with a decent participation. In your view, what can be done better to make these schemes more effective, especially considering the fact that India depends almost 60-70% on China for imports?
So we have been beneficiary of PLI 2 actually. And I would say that PLI 1 was a better, though we have been beneficiary of PLI 2, I'm going back and saying that PLI 1 was actually aimed at a very right objective. The objective was to really see that how do we reduce cost in the system? How do we become self-reliant? What is happening today is intermediates, advanced intermediates, KSMs. If you put all of this together, almost 80% dependency is there, and we saw that in presentation as well actually.
Yeah.
The PLI 2 was like a softer version where they said that, if you're exporting so much, I mean, from your current grid and everything, you'll continue to get money. I mean, but it was not enough way and fashion that it directly said that if you are going to manufacture product A, B, C, which should be an import substitution. China is today exporting these goods into India. India is importing these goods. There is nobody manufacturing these goods in India. Just identify them and say that if you manufacture 10%, 15%, 20%, do a import substitution. Here is the money on table and take it actually. So if that is done, and that should be done in form of a direct benefit transfer kind of thing actually. Somebody making this product, there is an import substitution, take this money. I mean, we had a different methodology a few years back where government said that they are going to put in some tariffs and stuff like that, and anti-dumping and all of that. This is like a almost kind of same thing where you are directly saying to the companies who participate in manufacture for import substitution gets so much of tangible benefit. Only when that happens. Okay, let me go a little bit back into the era and say to our viewers that why did China gain so much, and why did they were able to topple everybody? Because there was a state support. State supported them almost anywhere between 15% to 35% on their costs. Now, maybe a direct imports or utilities or export benefits and so on and so forth. Actually, this in a way has not happened, and whenever India has tried to do it, WTO has kind of opposed it, and we have been fallen off faces actually. If we are able to bring in a very smart move for the companies who are really going to do import substitution, and there's a methodology of making their inputs cost, I mean, cheaper. I think that's the only way we will be able to get the import substitution, and that is how the Atmanirbhar concept could be achieved.
Okay. Then next question is on how the Indian biosimilars performing in US market? Is the US market adapting to biosimilars? So, Mitanshu, will you like to take this?
Yeah, sure. So look, I mean, these are really early days for biosimilars. Actually, we cannot go and say that we have a thumping win on biosimilars as far as India is. Yes, what I can say is that we as a India INC, we are working on almost 80% of the opportunities which are there. When I say we, I'm talking about the industry as a whole. Actually, the large portion of this is on the patent cliff is coming from 26, 27 onwards and beyond. So it would be seen then that what the efforts which you are doing, all the seeding work which is happening today is going to put us into what arena at that point in time. Yes, that's the fun part as far as the biosimilars are concerned. As far as the new chemical entities are concerned on the bio side, I think there is very little work which is happening in the India. So we are never going to have something like Humira coming from India, right? I mean, let us be very clear about it.
Okay. So this is the last question which we'll take. This question is from Mr. Rajiv. There is an increased private equity participation in the Indian pharma space. What is your thought on consolidation in Indian pharma industry? So, Mr. Agrawal, can you take this?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting trend which is emerging now, with JB going to KKR and, Glenmark API also going to. So all these things have happened. But I think all said and done, the consolidation was there. If you see in the past, almost about 2 years or so after COVID, actually, this particular process really picked up very well. And I am sure this is going to be there in the industry now. The now recent talk of Cipla, getting, attracting the PE investors again, So though there are going to be, other pharma companies along with them, but the bigger role will be played by the PE investors. And that is something which is definitely going to be there. How much consolidation it will take place is something which is a thing to be seen. According to us, I think it's not going to be a big consolidation or a major event. But yes, it is their role in the industry is going to increase. That is for sure.
Pulkit, can I add a small point?
Sure.
Yeah, so if you see the PE guys are really playing very smart game here, and if you see what they are doing, and is that they are picking up their bets on A company, B company, C company, Z, PQR, like that. Okay, now there's this 6-7 entities where they have put their bets on. What they are doing is they are then sort of collaborating those 7 investments in a way that the sum value of that 7 is more than the individual value of each one of those investments.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that sort of synergy is unprecedented. We, as in like the promoters in India, have not been able to do it because we worked in silos. We worked in our own sort of comforts. We worked in our sense of this company is ours, and some stuff like that. I think these people are teaching us lesson that this is the smart way of doing things. Here's a company who's into intermediates. Here's a company who's into sort of the advanced analyticals. He's the company into final leg of formulations. He's a beautiful CDMO. Why can I not join the dots here and bring the absolute synergy? So the total value would be much higher. I think that's what they are focusing, and they're doing it in very smart way. Last 2 years has seen 27,000 crores getting infused from the PE guys into the Indian companies, and this is just a tip of iceberg. It's going to be massive thing which is going to come over years.
So for PE, like 1 + 1 is 11, not 2.
Yes. You said it, Pulkit. Yeah.
That's true. And that is what the smartness which Mitanshu is talking about. That's what they are really. They are not interested in your normal 1 plus 1 is 2. They are not interested. They are interested in 1 plus 1 is equal to 11.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal, Mr. Shah, for your insightful views. It was a privilege to host you. I will now hand over to Mangesh to give concluding remarks. Over to you, Mangesh.
Thank you, Pulkit, for moderating the session, and Naveen for your presentation. Thank you again to our guest speakers for your insightful views. And thank you to all the participants for taking the time out and being a part of the CareEdge webinar. For any further queries, feedback, or suggestions, please write to us at corp.com@careedge.in. Goodbye for now. I request the tech team to log off.